Hey guys, today we're in the book of Genesis, chapter 42. Now, we left off with all of the world coming to Egypt because there was a worldwide famine, and God used Joseph in order to plan for that. And so today we pick up when Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt. He said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Behold, I've heard that there's grain in the sale of Egypt. Go down and buy grain." Jacob, who is in Canaan, who is in the promised land, they're starting to have a famine. This is probably within the first year of the 7 years of famine. And so here he says, "Hey, I hear Egypt has a surplus. You guys need to go to Egypt." And as Jacob mentions Egypt, the other brothers, the 10 other brothers, look at each other and they're like, "Egypt." They remember they sold their brother to the Midianites who is going to Egypt. So they know that their brother is in sale in Egypt. And so when their dad says, "You need to go to Egypt," they're all shooting these weird looks at each other. And their dad says, "Why are you looking so weird? It's just Egypt. Go to Egypt and buy some grain." Um, and so he sends his 10 sons, right? Remember, Jacob had 12 sons. One of them was Joseph, who he believes is dead, but is in Egypt. But notice what happens. He only sends 10 because why? He did not send Benjamin. Benjamin is the youngest. He is the 12th son, but he is also the last son of Rachel, the wife whom he truly loved, right? Remember, Rachel had two children. She had Joseph and she had Benjamin. And so Rachel has died. And so Benjamin is his last effort of holding on to Rachel. So he sends his 10 sons, but he keeps Benjamin at home because he says, "No way. If I was to lose Benjamin, I would die. There's no way I'm sending Benjamin." And so they go down and notice what happens. The 10 come in and they bow themselves before Joseph. Now they don't know it's Joseph because there's so many years across. Joseph is dressed up as basically as a pharaoh. They would have never expected it. But notice it says that they bow down. They needed food. If they did not get this grain from Egypt, they would die of starvations. Their families would die of starvations. Their father would die of starvation. So they needed this, right? So they're sucking up. So they bow down and ask, "Hey, we need some grain." But you can imagine Joseph as he's standing there and he sees his brothers bow down. He remembers when he was younger in the fields with his brother, he had a dream. And he said, "Hey, let me tell you about my dream. One day I saw there's corn sheaves and they all bow down to me. I noticed that the sun and the moon and the stars, they all bow down to me." And now here his brothers are all bowing down to him. You can imagine what that felt like. But Joseph treated them like strangers. And he spoke roughly to them. And he asked them, "Where do you come from?" Now, we'll find out later that Joseph is not speaking to them one on one. He's speaking to them with an interpreter. He doesn't want them to know that he knows Hebrew. He's speaking Egyptian, right? So he's speaking through an interpreter, but they can tell in his mannerisms and his tone of voice that he's being mean to them, but for a reason. And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them. If you jump down to verse 13, it says, and he calls them spies, and they say, "We're not spies." He says, "We're your servants. We have 12 brothers, son of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest in this day is with our father. Benjamin is with our father, and one is no more." This is a lie. They're telling Joseph that Joseph is dead. Joseph's alive. He knows it's not true, right? But they say, "One is no more." And he continues on and says, "Hey, here's the deal. You're spies. How am I going to believe you? I don't know what's going to happen." And so he puts them in jail. And after 3 days in jail, he comes back to them and he says, "Okay," in verse 18, he says, "Do this and you will live." Well, you would imagine 3 days in jail, they were willing to do anything, right? And so he says, "Here's what you're going to do. Here's how you prove to me you're not spies. Here's how you prove that I will not kill you," right? That's what he's saying. He says, "If you're honest men, you will go and you will get your youngest brother and you will bring him back. But I will keep one of you in prison." I'm going to hold one. So I'm going to give you the grain and I'm going to send you off. But when you get home, you bring back your youngest brother. You are 10, and when you come back, you will be 11, right? And so so this is what happens. We see in verse 23, they did not know Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them, and he turned away from them and wept. When he tells them this news, they begin to speak, right? They're speaking in Hebrew, and we can see that it says that we are in this pickle, we are in this mess, we are locked in the prison of Egypt because, verse 21, because concerning our brother. They knew, they still had a conscience, they still had repentance, they still had regret of killing or selling Joseph, right? Selling him away. And so they said, this is why God is putting this blame on us, right? And so they're talking, and Joseph is hearing this, all right? He's hearing this, and it says that he turned around and he wept. He could see that there was still some conscience there. They still thought about Joseph. They still cared about him a little bit, okay? And so he could see that there's some emotion here. And so he takes Simeon. We take Simeon, the oldest one, and he binds him up and puts him in jail. And he gave orders to fill the bags of grain. And notice this, he fills their bags with grain, and he replaces every man's money in his sack. And he gave them provisions for the journey. This is interesting, right? So he tells the interpreters, hey, fill their bags up with grain, but don't take any money for them. Take their money bags and stick it in the top of their bag of grain and tie it up. And not only that, not only am I going to give them the grain for free, but I'm going to give them provisions, which means food and water, not only for them, but for their animals as they travel too. They couldn't carry these big bags of grain. They would have came with a caravan, donkeys, servants, camels of those. So here we see grace of Joseph, grace of Jesus, right? Giving them things that they necessarily didn't deserve. And they loaded up their donkeys and they take off. And on the way, one of the brothers reached over in the bag to get some fodder to give to the donkey, and he notices his money sack. And notice it says in verse 28, their hearts failed them. Why would their hearts fail them? Man, they got some grain for free. But here's the problem. When they went to Egypt, the Pharaoh, the number two of Pharaoh, said that they were spies. And now is he going to say that they are thieves, right? And so they didn't want that, right? So the hearts dropped. Oh my goodness, this is not good. They're going to think we stole this, and we didn't mean to steal this. We meant to give them to money. And when they came to Jacob, their father, verse 29, they told him everything. This time they told him the truth. Remember the last time they left, they came back with one less brother, and they lied about that brother. This time they left and they come back with one less brother, but they say the truth. Right? They tell the truth. They're starting to learn. But and so they're walking through the story, right? We told Pharaoh, we're honest men. We are 12 brothers. We're 12 brothers, son of our father. One is no more. Well, they're kind of telling the truth, right? They're telling the truth, but they're still lying to their father that Joseph is dead. So they say all of this. They tell him, here's what happens. We're to come and we're to bring back the youngest so that they will release Simeon from jail. As they emptied their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they saw, their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. Not just one man's bundle of money, but all of the brothers' bundle of money fell out. And it says they were afraid. They were afraid of the consequences. They were afraid of Joseph. This is hard to believe, but a lot of times people are afraid of grace. They didn't see this as a good token. They saw this as a bad token, right? And it says they were afraid. And Jacob, their father, said to them, you have bereaved me of my children. He's saying, it's y'all's fault. Everything that's happened is y'all's fault, the kids' fault, which is really truth. Joseph is no more. That's not true. Simeon is no more. Not really. He's just in jail. And now you want to take Benjamin away from me. All this has come against me. You see that line? All this has come against me. Ever since Joseph has left, ever since Rachel has died, Jacob has been living in this fog, like, woe is me. Oh, this is a pitiful life. He hasn't been seeing the sun shine every day. He's been seeing the shadows of every day. And so this is exactly where he's living. Notice what it says. Reuben says, Dad, this is what we need to do. So here's the deal. Let Benjamin go back with me so we can rescue the other brother. And I promise you, if he doesn't come back, you can kill my first two born sons. Wow, what a promise, right? So he's saying, Dad, I'll absolutely bring him back. Um, in verse 38, he says, my son shall not go down with you, and his brother is dead, and he is the only one left. We see the darkness of where Jacob is at, right? His son says, hey, Dad, let us go so we can rescue our other brother. And Jacob says, no, you're not taking Benjamin. Simeon can rot in jail. And notice what he says. He's the only one left. Jacob doesn't care about the 10 other brothers. He only cares about Benjamin. His focus is solely on one child, not the other 10 who are living. If harm should happen to him on this journey, you would bring me down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol, which means if something happened to him, I would truly just grieve myself to death. That's what it means. I'll grieve myself to death. Wow, what a story, right? You would ask yourself, where is Jesus in this? And I think I kind of already gave it away, right? They come to Joseph, and Joseph he could have killed them. He could have jailed them. He could have done anything he wanted, but he gave them grace. He just didn't let them go, but he gives them above and beyond. Every day as Christians, we come to Jesus. We come with dirt and grace, and we come with dirt and sin and all the things, but yet God gives us more than we deserve every single day for his glory and for our opportunity to be able to share his glory. And we'll see that in the next chapters as they continue back to Egypt. I hope that makes sense, and we'll see you tomorrow in chapter 43. God bless.